Hi, my name is Mike Reynolds. I'm a longtime Mamaroneck resident. On this edition of LMC Cast Community Profile, I'm joined by Chuck Strome. Chuck was appointed part-time interim manager for the Village of Mamaroneck on April 1st and is working with Deputy Village Manager Dan Sarnoff. Chuck brings a wealth of experience to the position, working in various capacities in New Rochelle on a career track that saw him start with the city as its Director of Emergency Services in 1989, before assuming Assistant City Manager, Deputy City Manager roles, ahead of serving as New Rochelle's City Manager for 22 years. How are we doing today, Chuck?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing all right, thanks. So, Chuck, you live in Tarrytown. You've been retired for a couple of years. What have you been doing? The golf game, tennis, writing a book?
Well, I'm not writing a book. I'm reading a lot of books. I'm playing a lot of golf and getting a lot of exercise that I couldn't do when I was working. So, keeping myself busy. But this particular opportunity to help out the village in their time of transition came about, and I thought it was a good thing to do. Keep my brain active and hopefully.
Okay. Another thing, I'm going to ask you an active question. Are you hiding a time machine? Because I was watching the Rangers and the Capitals playing Game 2 of their Stanley Cup Series the other night, and a man named Dylan Strome scored a goal against the Rangers. Boo!
There's a Dylan Strome and a Ryan Strome, neither of whom, they're brothers. They're not related to me. So even when I was young, I couldn't play hockey, can't skate. But I get that question a lot. It's not a common name. So athletes making their mark with our name is good.
Cool. All right. All kidding aside, you've been retired. Why get back into the municipal mix?
Well, I really hadn't planned on doing it. I got a telephone call about 2 months ago from a former colleague of mine, the retired administrator of the town of Mamaroneck, who had gotten a call from some of the board members, the village board members here, asking if he knew of anybody that might have some time to help them during a transition as they're looking for a new manager. And I wasn't really looking to do it, but I said I'd certainly talk with them, and we had a chat, and we found, at least we think, that there's a possibility that I can be of some assistance to the village during the short time that I hope to be here.
Okay.
And so I've been working for a month, 2.5 days a week, and I've been looking at the operations of the village and trying to make some recommendations. I was a manager of a large city in Westchester for 22 years.
Right.
Not that it's the perfect place, but they've had the manager form of government over there forever, and it does work. And it works when the manager is allowed to manage, and the village board produces policy. And you have to have procedures in place to allow that to happen. And both sides, of the elected side and the appointed side, have to have an understanding of how the village is going to run. Because a lot of people don't understand that their manager is the one running the day-to-day operations of the village, not the mayor. And
Right.
it's no disrespect to the mayors in Westchester, but most of them are part-time people who
Sure.
have other jobs, and they're the elected official, and they're the face of the community. But the grunt day-to-day stuff is done by the manager and the staff, and you have to have policies and procedures in place that allow them to do the job correctly.
So opportunities knocked in maybe in a little unusual way this time. The city you're referring to is New Rochelle, as I mentioned before. 750 people work in New Rochelle, thereabouts 80,000 people. It's about 4 times the size of the village of Mamaroneck. How do those experiences translate to what you have in front of you here?
Well, one of the interesting things about New Rochelle and Mamaroneck is, yes, New Rochelle is bigger, but the demographics of the two communities are strikingly similar. There are 80,000 people in New Rochelle, but municipalities like New Rochelle and Mamaroneck have dealt with changing populations over there's the larger Hispanic American population now in both places. So, and at the end of the day, local governments are really service providers. You pick up the garbage, you respond to police calls, you have some parks for people to go enjoy themselves, you collect taxes and run the finances of the city. In New Rochelle, we had a professional fire department. Over here, it's volunteer,
Right,
so
sure.
that's a little bit of a difference. But there's the size of the community doesn't, I think, make that big of a difference in how the basic day-to-day stuff gets done. There are some differences in state law of what cities can do that villages cannot do, because there's a separate law for cities and villages and towns. There are three separate laws. But most of it is applicable, and I have found that some of the issues in the first month and the people that I've been dealing with are strikingly similar to what I dealt with for 22 years. It's not all that different.
Okay. You've joined at the time the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees. They're going through the budgeting process. I think there's a meeting tonight. I think they have to make a vote, approve the budget by the end of this month, April 30th. Have you been involved in that situation, talking to the different committees, the Board of Trustees, and Dan Sarnoff?
Well, I talked to Dan a lot. I started on April 2nd. The budget process for the village, their fiscal year is obviously June 1. They started their budget process in December, January, so it was 90% done. Okay. I have been asked to take a look at a couple of things and provide some suggestions on how to maybe tighten things up a little bit. But more importantly, what I'm trying to do is develop a budgeting process that might see some improvements for future years that would allow them to do things. They've expressed a little bit of concern over how certain things are done, and maybe it's just a lack of communication. Maybe it's that there is a policy or procedure that could help.
Shorten that process a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at it, and I'll provide my recommendations to the board, and they can. One of the beauties of being an interim person is that they can take them or leave them. Okay. It's really not that big a deal. And I think it's important when you have somebody looking at these things that it's somebody with fresh eyes that has no vested interest in it. I have no interest in being the permanent village manager of the Village of Mamaroneck. Going to help them in their recruitment and hopefully convince a few people that I know to apply so that they get a good professional manager. So I'm not really involved in this budget because they have to adopt it by next Monday.
Right.
So they've done most of the work before I got here.
Okay. Did you know Dan Sarnoff coming in? Have you worked with him on other projects?
I have known Dan for 20 plus years. He was in the manager's office in Scarsdale before he came to Mamaroneck. Interestingly enough, I had more interaction with Dan and the village of Scarsdale than I ever did with the village of Mamaroneck. Had a lot of interaction with the town of Mamaroneck. I'm not really sure why that is. I think it's something that should be improved because there are areas of mutual interest between the city of Rochelle
geographical
and the village.
Overlap.
Yes, it's a neighbor. So there should be some more communications. Hopefully we'll be able to do that too.
Okay. I was hoping, Chuck, we could talk a little bit about the budget in some broad strokes. As we mentioned, needs to get done by the end of April. It's a June 1 to May 31st fiscal year. I believe the proposed budget is about $48.5 million, up about 8% from $44.9 in fiscal 23-24. Is that about right?
That's my understanding, and the great majority of that increase, I'd say probably 90% of it, is uncontrollable. You have union contracts. You have health insurance rates that are set by the state. There's no choice in the matter. You get the bill and you pay the bill. You have pension rates that are set by the state, and both of those have been going up. The pension more so now because of the volatile market hasn't been as performing as well as it had in the past. So most of the, people I think need to understand that in the municipal budget, 75 to 80% of the funds are for personnel and benefits. Right. So when you're talking about reducing the budget, you really have to reduce people. There's not much. The rest of it's kind of
otherwise the services are not provided if the people are not there.
That's right. If you don't have enough sanitation folks, you're not going to get your garbage picked up the way you want, and you want to have your police and your parks. So, that happens year to year, and it's hard to deal with because you have the same entity, the state of New York, that's putting a property tax cap on all local governments, which limits your revenue. By the same token, that's the same entity that's telling you got to pay a 10% health insurance increase and a 10% pension increase, and it's a budget that almost every year starts out in the negative, and you got to figure out a way to get it at least to break even. Unlike the federal government, the local governments and the state government, for that fact, can't have deficits. You got to be a balanced budget. So there's no getting around it. So it's a difficult process, and tax caps are very politically popular things. I don't happen to support them because I think the people that should be determining what the property tax level is are the people that are elected to do so, not the state, which has no knowledge of what's going on in
Right, sure.
Mamaroneck or New Rochelle or anywhere. But it is what it is. It's not going to go away. So municipalities are faced with a significant challenge every year because of those factors.
Yeah, as you said, it's a challenge. Again, the village doesn't function, or the town or the city doesn't function unless the people are there, and those people have to get paid. So,
And you know, another thing people don't really understand is their property taxes are broken out into three different layers, and the municipal one is, pretty low. The majority of your property taxes are paid to the school district.
right,
And then you have about 18 or 19%, maybe a little less, that goes to Westchester County. So when you add all that up, there's usually around 20% of your property taxes go to fund village services. And I always used to tell people when I was in New Rochelle, it lets you say you have an average tax bill of $20,000, property tax bill. Well, 20% of that is $4,000. That's not a bad deal for the sanitation service and the police
Right.
service and the parks that you get. But it's a lot of people don't know that. They think all that money that they're paying
Right,
is
it's
going to the
going here.
village government, and it's not.
okay. One of the things that's impacted the local community here, I think there was the library ran into some problems. I'm not going to get into that. And I think that the board voted to extend a $1.4 million loan to the library. It's kept the store open. Any sense you can give me for how things are going on with that at this juncture?
What they did was really issue tax anticipation notes, and that's a way of borrowing. And the library has been paying what they call the debt service, or would be the payment on that to
Okay.
the village. So the village is not fiscally impacted, as I understand it. And I believe it's maybe a 3 or 4 year program, and the amount that the village pays each year is going to go down until the library has gotten themselves back on foot. I don't know a lot about it because I'm new, but nobody's going to close the library, so you got to figure out a way to keep it open.
Gotcha. I was watching on LMC Media one of the board meetings, and they were talking about the budget, and Dan Sonoff said that about, the process, 98% of the budget expectations, that's where spending goes. He says a pretty efficient process. Do you see that as the case?
So far, yes. It's like I say, when 80% of your budget is fixed,
Right.
people have to understand that you're really talking on the margins when you want to cut or add to it. So the benefits are quite expensive in New York State. Public employees, and I think they deserve it. I was one of them, so I can't
Right.
complain. They deserve the benefits that they're getting, and the cost of health insurance and pensions is not going to, in my mind, go down. So it's
No.
just something that you've got to figure out a way to fund.
Okay. One, I'm sure you know, as one of the biggest issues confronting Mamaroneck is flooding. Every time it rains here, people are cringing, worried that their house, their property is going to go underwater, be destroyed. Your thoughts on the situation?
Well, I have thoughts in general on flooding, and from the little that I know about Mamaroneck, they're fortunate. Here in Mamaroneck, they do have an Army Corps of Engineers project that I think is going to get fully funded soon, that they
Okay.
can get underway, but these projects take a long time.
Right.
Sometimes it takes 2 years to design the projects. So we were not immune from flooding in New Rochelle. Some of the flooding, it's unfortunate, but some of it is not fixable. Some homes in these areas that we live in here in Westchester should not have been built where they're built. And there's just no way that you can control the flooding or eliminate the flooding. So I get it, though. It's very nerve-wracking when you can't, or if you're away and there's going to be a storm and you don't know if your house is going to flood. So from what I've seen, the elected officials and the appointed officials do have it as a priority, but people need to understand that, it's not just putting a pump to pump something out to the street that's going to fix a flooding problem. There's really old infrastructure under the ground,
Right.
probably needs replacement and made bigger. For whatever reason, the 100-year storm happens every year now, once or twice a year.
Yes,
so those
unfortunately.
categorizations of the storms are ridiculous, and we're just getting a lot more rain.
Right.
Not as much snow, which is a benefit in the end, because it's a funny story, because one of the things I wanted when I retired was to put my feet up on the coffee table in the first snowstorm and say, I don't really care if they plow the streets. Well, there hasn't been one since I
that's true.
retired, so I haven't had a chance.
Exactly. It's been very dry that way the last couple of years. All right. The other thing, the other big issue is affordable housing. Talking about putting in a pretty large apartment building, perhaps on the Hunter lot. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are on, I don't have a lot of thoughts on the specifics of that project because I haven't been briefed on it and haven't been asked to look at it. Affordable housing is a major issue in Westchester County, and sometimes it's definitional. People hear the word affordable and they think low income, they think Section 8, they think a lot of different things. But sometimes affordable housing can be 70 to 80% of median income, which in Westchester County is rather high.
Sure.
So it's unfortunate that in many of our municipalities, we don't pay the police personnel enough to afford to live in the community that they
Right.
work in.
Absolutely.
So some of this I prefer the term workforce housing to
Okay.
affordable housing. Not that you shouldn't have both.
Okay.
But workforce housing is a very much needed thing so that the teachers and the policemen and the people that work for the village, if they want to, can live where they
Right,
work.
can be actually part of the
Yeah,
community.
and it makes you. I'm not saying people don't care.
Right.
I'm just saying it's inherently in your mind that if you live somewhere,
You're gonna care
you're going
more.
to care about the place because
Right.
you live there.
All right, you had mentioned that obviously property tax is the major contributor on the revenue side. Sales tax. What else contributes to municipalities'
Well,
budgets?
that's one of the things I've been asked to look at. Are there any fees? Are the other things basically?
Okay.
And is there a way to propose some fees that would take the burden off of the property tax? We did that in New Rochelle with a couple of fees, and when they were proposed, they were controversial. At the time, people said that, well, if you make it a fee, I can't deduct it from my property taxes. Well, that's not an issue anymore because there's a $10,000 cap.
Yep.
Almost everybody pays $10,000 in state and property taxes in Westchester County.
Right.
So there's no cap. You have to try to get creative because, as I said, almost every municipality starts every budget year in a fiscal deficit. And you can't, sooner or later, the rock runs dry. So you have to come up with some alternative revenues. And fees are the answer to that. And sometimes there are significant fees. It is a helpful thing, but they're hard to get approved because
Right.
residents by nature are like, well, aren't my property taxes supposed to pay for
Right,
that? Now
sure.
you're
Yep.
just adding fees to my bill. But that's really it. It's the sales tax in Mamaroneck is received through the county. In New Rochelle, we were a direct recipient of sales tax.
Okay.
So you share the
So-
sales tax with the county.
So Westchester's getting a cut.
Westchester gets a cut of what's happening in Mamaroneck.
Right.
They did not in the cities. The cities
Okay.
get their own.
Okay. We're getting to the end here. What do you like about the village of Mamaroneck, the friendly village? What are some of its municipal advantages and some of the programs you find interesting?
Well, from what I can tell you, from what I know and knew and have seen, Mamaroneck Avenue is bustling. It's there are a lot of
Hard to get a spot, people. Sorry.
Yeah, there are a lot of main streets in Westchester County that aren't doing so well. So that I think is a big positive. And every retailer, if you really listen to them, the one thing they'll say is the best thing for them is traffic on the main street. People slow down and see that the store's there. Obviously, the waterfront is a tremendous benefit. I'm going to be touring Harbor Island Park in the next couple of weeks. Not that I haven't been there before, but to actually look at
Right,
it,
sure.
see it. There's a marina here. It's a vibrant community, and this area of Westchester, the Sound Shore, is really very attractive for people. Problem is, it's expensive to live here,
Right.
and that's just the way of the world, and we have to try to figure out ways to make it affordable for people.
As I mentioned, flooding's probably at the top of everybody's list. Beyond that, what are some areas that you see that VOM can improve in or needs to improve in?
I've only been here a month, so I'm hesitant to say stuff like that. I think there's some internal policies and procedures that the village could adopt that would help things that may not even be noticeable to the public, but it may be noticeable. And when they deal with the public, when they deal with the village, that things are done more efficiently than they might be done now. That's not to say that I know everything, but it's just fresh eyes. I think it's fresh eyes with some experience that can come in and maybe improve some things. You've got a great police department from what I can tell here. Seems like the parks are beautiful. It seems like the Public Works Department does pretty well. So, minor stuff. I don't think there's a whole lot to...
Okay.
The next real permanent manager will come in and probably do a wholesale look at things. And my goal is to make this an attractive job for people to apply for, so that you get a professional in here. And I think that's what the village board wants, and hopefully we can get that accomplished.
So how long does VOM get to have Chuck Strome in the mix?
Well, the letter says until the next permanent manager
Okay.
is placed, so I'll be around unless something changes, and that's generally going to take 6 months or so, something
Okay.
like that.
So they're actively recruiting and,
They've hired a firm.
Okay.
They haven't advertised a position yet. I'm working with the firm to develop the process, but these things take a lot of time. You have to put out an advertisement. You have to allow 4 to 6 weeks for people to apply. Then you have to review, come up with finalists. You're going to have the summer in the middle of this, which is going to make
Exactly.
it more
Yep.
difficult.
Right.
So I'm thinking it's going to be in the fall.
and then will that, again, forgive me, I don't know the procedure, that'll be voted on by the Board of Trustees and yourself and Dan?
Not the only people that vote on hiring of the manager is the mayor and the village board of trustees.
Okay.
The 5 votes, so they'll be doing the interviews. If I participate or in the process at all, they'll ask me for my advice maybe. But no, in the traditional manager form of government, the elected body, in this case the village board, appoints the village manager. And I think there's some other people that the clerk treasurer, a couple others are appointed. But where I was in New Rochelle, everybody else that worked for the city was either directly or indirectly working for the manager, not the elected officials. That's, for the most part, the way it is here, too. And that's the way it works. That's why the manager forum was created, to act more like a business, keep the quote-unquote politics out of the day-to-day operations. Politics are there all the time, but the manager's real role is to work with the village board on policy, work with the staff on implementation.
Okay. That concludes this edition of LMC Cast Community Profile. I just wanted to say thanks again to Chuck Strome and wish him the best of luck in his role as the interim manager for the Village of Mamaroneck.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Appreciate you joining us, Chuck. Anyway, we're at the end. LMC Media is a nonprofit media center located in Mamaroneck. LMC Media's The Studio on the Avenue, where this podcast was recorded, is located in the heart of Mamaroneck at Mamaroneck Cinemas. Please visit lmcmedia.org/service /podcast to book your time in this state-of-the-art convenient location, which you can walk to and arrive at from the Mamaroneck train station. And you can also support this nonprofit media center at lmcmedia.org /donate. Till next time, this is Mike Reynolds for LMC Cast Community Profile. Bye.